Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Woodtones working on the acoustic bass guitar neck. Again, here's the original one. Last video I said that the neck blank that I had wasn't long enough to make all of the heel, and that I was going to show what idea I had to fix that at the end of the last episode, which was a while ago, I know, sorry about that, but today I'm going to finish off the heel block, hopefully cut out the peg head too, and cut out the general shape of the neck, theoretically. See how far I get, how long this takes, but like I said, I had an idea of how to fix the neck blank to make it longer, or add pieces on stuff, and that is, I actually have another piece of mahogany handy and ready to go here, and I have another piece of maple to inlay it. Unfortunately, it's not figured. The piece that I put into the neck is figured, so it'll be a little noticeable, but because it's the heel, you'll actually be looking at it from the top, and once you do, the figure in the maple kind of goes away once you look at the end grain there. This part's called the end grain. So I figured I could get away with it. The mahogany will look a little different. Unfortunately, there's not much I can do about that. Again, this is just for me. If this were an instrument I was making for somebody else, I would not do this. I'd make sure the neck blank was long enough before I ever started. But this is just for me, so this is just to practice on and get better on. So, in order to make this work, I'm going to have to inlay the maple down the center of the mahogany here, and I'm going to need to measure. Let's trim this. I'm going to need to measure how wide the mahogany is here. The maple, I've compared it, it is the same size, so that is good. But the mahogany, this mahogany block is a lot wider than the neck itself, so I have to find out how wide each piece is on each side of the maple so I can know what to trim this down to. Looks like it is coming in at 1.5. Maybe a hair more on one side, but 1.5 it is, so I'll set up the table saw and get that cut out. Alright, so got the mahogany cut to width, and I also cut the maple too while I was at it. Wasn't too bad. You just line up the mahogany on each side and mark it off with a pencil and trim it, just make sure it's a little big. Alright, so got the pieces here ready to go. I'll lay down the sheet of foil again, just to make sure no glue gets onto the table and rusts it or anything. Got the pieces there. Make sure to have your clamps handy before you start. 2 should be enough. Alright, and got my bottle of glue. So you just want to spread the glue on. Squeeze out a good amount. You don't want too much, so much that it just starts dripping out. But you'll know if it's too little just because your finger kind of sticks to the wood itself. It won't slide around, the glue won't spread evenly, it'll kind of stick where it is as the wood soaks it in. Alright, I had a little bit too much, so I'll spread the excess on this piece here. And go a little thinner. There we go. Spread the glue around again. If you have to air at all with gluing wood, I'd suggest airing on the side of a little bit too much, because if you don't have enough glue in the joint, it will actually come apart. It won't hold properly. If you have too little or too much, then you'll just have a lot of squeeze out to deal with. Neither one's very good, but too much is better, I'd say. Alright. So I'm going to clamp it up. I'm actually going to use the bar of the clamp here as a way to hold the piece as it clamps together. Make sure everything stays all nice and lined up. All flat and even. Alright, can't do that on, can't use the bar on this side. There's not enough space, it's too small of a piece. Let's see. Make sure it's all good. Slid around a little bit. There we go. So after you get it all clamped like that and the glue is all set, just take your finger and wipe off the excess. You can use a wet paper towel. That works well too. The only problem with that I found is that the wet paper towel disintegrates. It becomes too soft for the wood. And if you have any jagged edges, the wood will actually just tear it. So let's wipe off all the excess that I can. Let's flip it over, wipe off the excess there. It's a bit worse on this side, but one trick that I have heard that I didn't come up with it, if you use a stick with a sharpened end, it'll actually act like a squeegee and just squeeze or spread up all that glue and pick it all up. It's not too hard to make a sharpened stick, just cut an angle on the end instead of flat. Alright, just got another sharpened stick. It's a little bit wider, so it should cover more surface area. You want to get up as much of the glue as possible. As this glue dries, I think I've mentioned in a previous video, it soaks into the wood itself. So if you try and finish over top of it, apply any sort of finish like a lacquer or shellac or varnish or anything, it won't stick to the glue itself. Plus, with the glue I'm using, just general wood glue, the glue itself won't stick to any previous glue. So if I have the heel joint here, the heel block or whatever, gluing now, and there's a lot of glue on the face here, after I cut it and take the halves and put them back to back like that, if there's a lot of glue in between it, it won't stick to that part. So you'll have to clean that out. Alrighty, let's add one more clamp. This time to this side to help make sure everything stays square. There we go. Alright, should be all good to go. I'm going to let this dry for about an hour. I got 2 heaters in my shop right now, so it's keeping it about 65-70 degrees right now. Which the glue likes. It likes being a bit warmer to dry. So I'm going to let this sit for about an hour, and then I'll come back and continue making the heel. Alright, so got the heel block, what's going to be the new heel block, all trimmed up and stuff, all squared too on the ends. So now I'm just going to lay it out and mark here just how deep I want it to be. Just grab my ruler here. Let's see, I'm having the tenon itself hang out 7/8 of an inch. Here's my shop cat George again. Come on, cat, you gotta get down. You gotta get down. Alright. So let's see, I have whatever the length is, I have to add 7/8 to it. So this one is what, 3.5? It's over 3.5. So let's see. Let's make this one 2 7/8 right there. So that way, I like on my heels, I like it to, as it curves down from the neck, it to actually curve back out again. I found especially on smaller necks, like on a violin or two that I made, or banjos and stuff, that little crook there helps secure the thumb as you reach down the fingerboard later, or down it farther, I mean. That little crook helps keep your thumb secured instead of your thumb wanting to slide down. That hook back keeps your thumb locked in place and your hand feels a little more secure. Plus it adds a little artistic flair, so that's why I do that. So first the neck drops down. So let's mark that out there. George, no, stay back. Alright, so 2 7/8, so let's see, let's do 2.5, let's see, -7, so about minus an inch would be what, 1.5? That'll be alright. I'm going to cut these blocks out on the bandsaw. Let's see. Cut them out on the bandsaw just because that's easier to do and it wastes less material than the table saw does. Let's see, and the heel of this, measured right at the base, goes for, let's see, 5¼ inches. It's 5¼ inches long from this point right here underneath the fretboard to the very end here. Because it's at an angle, you have to measure a straight line like that. So this neck currently, I'm aiming for 5¼ and currently I am at 1 3/8. So each block here is about 5/8 of an inch, so it should take a couple extra blocks glued on. Hopefully this will be enough. George, come on, buddy. You're a good boy and all, but I need you to stay down, okay? Alright. So again, go 2½. Alright. And let's also, on these blocks, I like to mark which side goes where, just so that way when I'm gluing the blocks on later, I know which way the blocks go, so the grain all matches up later. So let's see, we got 1, 2, 3, and 4. Alrighty. So I'm gonna get this cut out on the bandsaw, and I'll be right back. Alright, so got all the blocks cut out here. You can see I got all 5 of them. And for this neck, for the base neck, the base itself is an arch top, so that means that the neck, if it were completely flat and completely cut at 90 degrees here, if you were to square it off just like that, I guess I wasn't on camera, if you were to square it off just like that, the neck itself, since the top actually rises away, the strings, since the bridge, let's imagine that the body is that tall, if you were to have a straight neck here, the strings coming from this point would actually angle up quite a bit to meet the bridge, as it sits up way higher. So you have to actually angle the neck back a bit to keep the strings low enough over the neck to make it playable. And on my previous bass neck, that angle was 83 degrees. I just measured it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, as I glue these blocks onto this, I'm going to move each one back just a hair, so that way I can save as much of the block as possible as it's cut on an angle here. As you cut, you can see each block, you'll lose a little bit. If you were to clamp them all straight, by the time you get to the last block with that angle, you'd lose so much of it. So let's get right to it. They're all numbered and with the arrow. Let's grab my glue bottle and some clamps. Never have too many clamps. It's always better to have just a little too many than a little too few. Alrighty. So lay out the foil again, keep the tabletop safe. Spread it all out, make sure it's all flat. And let's get to work. So let's lay the neck down here, and let's spread glue on the first block. Since the blocks all get smaller as they go, sometimes the glue lid gets stuck on. There it goes. Because the blocks all get smaller as they go, I found that you can actually just put glue on the one block you're adding on. You don't have to worry about gluing the neck, the neck part that you're actually attaching the block to. Just because I found then you have a lot of wasted glue as your glue dries in a part of the block or part of the neck that isn't covered. I'll show you what I mean in a second. Let's see, let's cover that all. So let's add this one on, moving it just a smidgy back, maybe like 3 millimeters, 2 millimeters, somewhere in there. So if I were to glue this part of the neck that was already glued on, all this free space right here, if I were to spread glue there, that would all just be wasted. So I found if you just spread glue on the block you're adding on, that saves you a bit of glue. Alright, let's squeeze out some more. And I know when I was making the heel earlier, the heel blank, I wiped off all that excess glue on my hands. I found that that's just the best spot I can spread the glue, at least when I'm working fast. If I wipe it on my hands, I at least know where it is and I'm not going to track it everywhere. Whereas if I have actually on my wooden bench that I made behind me, on the leg over here, I've got a spot that I just keep wiping the old glue off on. Let's see, this one, oops, blocks got kind of misnumbered, but they're about the same size here, so that's okay. So I always double check everything, make sure you got what you're looking for. Make sure you got the right blocks and you're pulling from the right side. So let's spread this on. Yeah, always double check everything before you glue it up, because once you glue it, it's kind of stuck for good. There are ways you can fix it or pull up the glue afterwards, but it's really hard, really time consuming. Oops, something fell. It's really hard, really time consuming, and there's a lot of chance for something to go wrong. So I'd advise not doing that. Let's see, this is 4. So make sure everything is good. Do a dry run or 2 or 3 if you need it before you spread glue on. Just a couple drops more. Really doesn't take a lot to go overboard on the glue. You want to watch out for that. Alright, and block number 5. This should make it about the same length as the old base neck, the heel. Plus, if I add a heel cap on afterwards, that will fully lengthen it out. So it should be all good to go. Let's just spread the glue on this last block. Alrighty, and set that there. Good. Wipe off the glue from your hands. And let's see. For this, because there are so many blocks, I found you can add a clamp to the side of the blocks to help keep everything in line before you clamp everything down. This just helps ensure everything stays where it's supposed to and nothing moves, because the glue does tend to be really slick. Yep, there's that one. Alrighty, there's the neck blank, gluing all up, so it should be good to go now. Just give it a couple hours. I'll probably give this one about 5 hours or so. Make sure it really clamps down and really dries the way I want it to. If I can clamp it early, there's a good chance the glue joint won't be strong enough and it'll actually come apart under any sort of pressure. So you want to make sure to give it ample drying time. More is never bad, but I think I'm gonna... That's going to take some time, so I'll meet you after that's all done drying. Alright, so I got the heel block glued. It's all dried now. Should be good to go. So like I said, I measured the angle on the heel on the first base neck, and that was 83 degrees. Right at the heel angle. Right at the heel here. So line up the protractor. And let's mark out that angle right here. There's that. 80 and 2 right there. So there's my angle marked out. I am going to lose a little bit off the bottom of the heel. George, yes, you're a good boy, but come on, you need to hop down, buddy. Alright, so there's the angle all marked out. So I'm going to cut that out on the... Just dropping everything today. Just got done recording a gaming video, so a little tired, but I'm going to cut out that angle on the table saw here. And quick do that, and then meet you guys on the flip side. Alrighty, so I got the neck angle, heel angle cut out here. Should be good to go there. Now I'm going to measure how wide the tenon is on the old neck, just so I know how wide to cut it on this guy here. So measuring this, we have, looks like 1 1/8 inches wide. So I'm going to have to mark that out. First though, instead of just marking that out, I have to find the center line. So just find exactly where center is on this. This is 4 1/2, so 2 1/4. Right, 3 1/2. Excuse me. So 3 is 1 1/2 plus 1/4 puts us right there. And let's do the same on this side. Okay, so it's just under that. So that'll put us right there. Alrighty. And then because it's 1 1/8, you have to go out 1/2 inch plus 1/16 from each side of the half point. There's a weird voice squeak there. Because if you divide 1 1/2 or 1 1/8 and 1/2, that gives you 1/2 plus 1/16. I don't know what that is. And my cat's gonna hop in the frame again. He's being very needy tonight. Give him a couple pets. Oh. George, why are you so needy? Oh, buddy. Oh, you just want some snuggles. You okay? Better. Alright, now that I got the lines marked out where I want them, we can move the old neck out of the way. And I'm going to line up the table saw with these cuts, set the blade to exactly the right height so I don't trim into the bottom of this neck actually at all. And I'll cut that out for, do that real quick. Alright, so I now got the tenon cut out, just like the other base neck here. Still a little rough. I'm going to have to clean it up with the chisel a little bit, but that's kind of to be expected. You're just kind of roughing it out at this stage. I have to add a reinforcement to the neck. Because this is a base neck, it's going to be under a lot of tension, like I've said. That's the whole reason for making a new neck. So what I have to do is I'm going to add this steel bar into the neck. And I'm going to use that to reinforce it a little bit. This will help keep the neck from flexing a little bit, add more stiffness to it. It'll add a little bit of weight, it's a sacrifice, but I'd take the strength over a little weight any day. So, let's see. I'm gonna inlay it right down the center. Actually, how long a piece do I need? Oh, I only got room for one. Yeah, I'm going to inlay it right down the center, right down this maple strip here. That'll act as a backing. So, what I want to do now is clean off my saw table. Never have stuff near your saw blade while you're cutting. If there's ever a chance that something will find its way into the teeth, it probably will. and at that point it's become a projectile, and it's very deadly. So again, I gotta mark out the center here. I already have the center line marked out on this end, so I'm just gonna take that around the corner, and I'll have to line it up on the table saw, but I'm gonna cut out a groove for that piece of metal on the table saw. Alright, so I got the reinforcement bar all cut out, and it's long enough. It looks like I'll have to shorten it a little bit, but I wanted to make sure to cut the channel for the reinforcement bar before I cut out the neck, just because then I could use the table saw for it and help keep things straight and all squared up. You can do it after the fact, after you cut the neck to the width you need. But when you do that, you need to set up a whole jig for a router and stuff. It gets tricky, and if you move or slip, it can damage things or make the neck unusable. So I found just cutting it on table saw makes my life a whole lot easier, and that's why I do that. So I got the slot cut, the bar is roughly fit. So now I'm going to trim out the neck on the bandsaw, and I'll meet you guys after the fact. Now it should be ready. Alrighty, so got the neck reinforcement channel cut out there. You can see I'm going to have to trim down this metal bar a little bit. It sits just below the surface, maybe like just a hair, which is alright, right where I wanted it. So I'm going to have to cut it to length and then cut the angle here on the peg head, help reinforce this area just a little bit. So I'm going to trim that out and meet you all on the other side once that's done.